22, and I'm glad that you've chosen KTN News as your channel of choice to inform you. My name is Dibala Nair. I trust you slept easy, woken up well as always, and ready to face the day. They say you lose an hour in the morning, and you will be the whole day searching after it. So make sure you are on time wherever you're supposed to be. And as Jack Swindle says, wherever you are, be there, right? So be there, the whole of you. You mind, of course, every faculty of your being. That is, be attentive. Thank you so very much. We have a lot to cover today here on Sokoni, looking at the current outlook of the economy in the country, with inflation continue to going up and up. What does it really portend for your pockets as well? The government has been very particular that they're going to tax you on the NSSF. 6% will be what they are going also to be taxing from your salary. We're also looking at what is happening with the new development from the Ministry of Industry and Trade regarding the Mitumba. Remember, that was a catnip issue during the campaigns, but right now we are hearing from the CS that that particular ministry is intending to make sure the textile industry is boosted. And of course, this will see the Mitumba industry also taper off. So what does it portend for the Mitumba traders in this country as well? Right, there is the new of course, PSs who are now shaking into place. We can see finally the government is taking shape as it is right now. I'm holding court this morning with Professor Gituro Wanaina, professor at the University of Nairobi School of Business and immediate former chair of Kenya School of Government. We have also the chair of KEPSA Foundation, Engineer Patrick Obath, will be joined later by Bill Okero, businessman and politician, and also Professor Atia Waris, who is a physical law and policy professor at the University of Nairobi, and that will be much later in the course of the program. But for now, let's see what is fresh off the press this morning, beginning with a bold paper. And this is the Standard. Ruto's big gamble in PS choices is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Standard this morning. And we can see the sub-headlines reading there: nominations in a delicate balance. President retains a few PSs for continuity, goes for fresh blood in young ones, rewards loyalists and political allies, but falls short on regional balance, gender and minority representation. That story is tucked away on page 4 and 5 of the business of the Standard this morning. Their faces are all spread here. We have Chris Kipto, we have Raymond Omolo, Amos Gathesha, we have Charles Hinga from the previous regime, has been maintained. Jonathan Mweke, the former deputy governor of Nairobi, also is PS right now. James Mohati is also on. We have Korir Singoi, we have Shedrack Mwadime, Belio Kipsang from previous regime as well, he's been maintained. Edward Kisiangani, that we have also John Tanui, Beatrice Inyangala, Juma Mhwana, who is the former director of Kenya National Qualification Authority. We have also Susan Mageni, we have Nixon Korir, we have John Oloetua and Umi Bashir. Those are the faces amongst many that have actually been spread on the front page of the Standard this morning. Let's see what we have on the teaser on top here. We have the bold roadside declaration. Haunt new CSs, what they have been pronouncing about the increment of the salaries of the civil servants. And also we've had a lot of these pronouncements from the CSs who have just been, of course, appointed. Setback for Kawira's cabinet. You can read all the details of the counties on page 22 of the Standard this morning. Body cams for taxmen and agents. Right, there is no escaping right now. And we've been discussing this largely, especially with Professor Gituro Wanaina. You know, we have the drones, we have now body cams. Now there's no escaping on the tax bracket. The government is really hard on this as well to make sure everyone is paying to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Right, let's see what we have also on the sports page there. Olympic hero breathes his last. That is another story that you want to follow on the sports pages of the Standard this morning. Right, let's see the hits. I didn't show you this. On the PS's choices from President Ruto. Hits in rewarding political allies. Ruto strategically goes for the younger blood. For continuity, he retains 5 sitting PSs, leaves out others. In events, new power men, among them Raymond Omolo, who is a PS interior there. Misses are here. Few communities, regions dominate half of the appointments, while some get none. Also misses the gender threshold, with former gender CS Margaret Kobia disappointed and a political lawless crowd out public service officials are more faulted by some. That is the current state of play as far as the look on the government is concerned. KDF off to keep peace in trouble, DR Congo. That was announced yesterday. You can read all the gritty details on page 12 of the Standard this morning. Call to end crimes against journalists is also a clarion call that you can also read all the details tucked away on page 7 of the Standard today. Real estate comes in handy for you every Thursday inside the bold paper. Make sure you grab a copy for that. That's how it looks today. Make sure you grab a copy for all the gritty details. The Daily Nation is up next. This is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. Ruto government takes final shape. That is a splash. Sharing the pie with crucial slots field. Focus now shifts to controversial CS's position. That is what the flagger is reading here. There's a mix of old and new, as we've seen before. List of proposed principal secretaries in the Kenya Kwanza administration reveals a delicate attempt by the president to equitably share the executive pie, but also exposes an inclination to reward party loyalists with planned positions. You have this story tucked away on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation. And the youngest is 43 years old. This is Soipan Tuya and Susan Nakumicha. And also we have the oldest the two of them there, they're 66 years. That is Ezekiel Machogu and Justin Muturi. Average age of CSs, that is 54. Gender, we can see 31% for CS. We have also PS, 23%, 69%. The 31% is for female there, and 69% male, 77 for PSs, 23 for PS, that is women or female and male there, according to that representation. The Ruto government has 7 female ministers out of 22 and misses the 1/3 gender rule by 2 percentage points. It also fails in the PS appointments, with only 12 out of the 51 posts going to women. Total CS's wealth also a given year, 15.6 billion shillings. Average CS wealth, 650 million shillings. Hustler strongholds of Mount Kenya and Rift Valley takes the lion's share of the CS and PS slots. You can see the map how that has been distributed, right? And it excludes 1 post for Turkana. 50% of cabinet's positions, 11 out of 22, went to Mount Kenya and Rift Valley. 50.9% of principal secretaries positions, 26 out of 51, went to Mount Kenya and Rift Valley. Excludes 1 post for Turkana, just to remind you. Right, that is how it looks there. Now there's a shock has 217 dead babies abandoned at Kenyatta. Loved in life, alone in death. This statement aptly captures the status of 217 children and 16 adults whose bodies have, over the past 4 months, been lying uncollected at the Kenyatta National Hospital in Nairobi. The 233 bodies are now set for burial in a mass grave because no one has stand up to collect them for the final rites and a decent burial. Relatives and friends have only 21 days to collect the bodies. That story tucked away on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. Tighten your belt. Life is about to get tougher. This is what MPs are saying. MPs saying in new report, delayed rains, the war in Ukraine, and a weak shilling will combine to push more Kenyans into poverty. At the back page of the Daily Nation is where it's tucked away. And of course, we've been telling you this recession is coming. And how then do we prepare ourselves as a country to tighten our belts for that recession and the storm that is coming? Life to get tougher for more Kenyans. MP's report reveals delayed rains, Russia-Ukraine war, and weak shilling set to push many into poverty. The story is well fleshed out for us there. And in numbers, 8.5% inflation in August, a historic high after breaching projected 7.5%, 1.3 trillion shillings. Kenya's debt repayments currently up from 850 million shillings. A niggling worry. We shall slice it and dice it here with our panelists here this morning. Let's move on and see what we have on the front page of the Star. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Star. Ruto to quash Uhuru's KU order. Council quits. Kiemba's team appointed after Adola's team refused to hand over title deed. This is a reversal on what we that story that has been ongoing with the landing at KU, Ruto to quash Uhuru's KU order, council quits. Will we see the resumption also of the Vice Chancellor? That is another story. Rift Valley, Mount Kenya gets land share of PSS jobs. You have the story right now. I don't need to belabor them. Again, that is what also we have as the faces here. End of the road for MPs' hefty rent payouts. Now, the completion of parliamentary offices has cut short the party for MPs who have been raking in millions of shillings for office spaces within the city. National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula has now ordered lawmakers be allocated offices at the 28-story Parliament Towers that is bound to be open soon. Also, patients' lives, at risk as hospitals run out of blood. Our blood bank is running empty. The Kenya National Blood Transfusion Service supplied hospitals with just about half the blood requested between 2016 and 2019. A performance report by Auditor General Nancy Gadungu shows this. You can read all the details inside the Star. On top here, Waluke's twin assault for release from imprisonment is pleading for bail. Read all the gritty details on page 9 of the Star. We buckle down to business. Universities seek World Bank bailout on biting cash crunch. Universities fund is seeking grant to bridge deficit. Higher learning institutions struggling to stay afloat. That story is well fleshed out on page 2 of the Business Daily. And of course, we have Professor Gituro Wanaina here to tell us more what has been ailing the universities so far. That is on the front page of the Business Daily. And we have also Professor Atia Waris as well to tell us more about that as well. Moi Rai families get reprieve in 1 billion shillings land row with the widow. You can follow the story on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Ruto unveils larger executive increases PS's numbers by 9 and carry to net 5.2 billion shillings from inflation taxes, and Laptra set 5 million shillings minimum investment in its property fund. You can follow the story on page 14 actually, of the Business Daily. Taifa leo lugha ya taifa hapa. Ruto alivyogawa makatibu, that is the splash. Rais ateua washauri wake na wanasiasa walioshindwa kwenye uchaguzi mkuu akitumisha 4 wa Jubilee. And here are their faces, some new, some old, some young, some old as well. You can follow that story on page 2 of Taifa Leo. Let's see what is happening around us. We go to Rwanda. Now, Iala MPs, they're calling for usage of local currencies across the EAC. The East Africa Legislative Assembly has been holding session in Kigali since last week. And this is tucked away on page 3. You can just see a related picture here. We can see MP Fatuma Ndagize speaking during the Iala session that was debating on the report of its Committee on Legal Rules and Privileges on the East African Community Surveillance, Compliance and Enforcement Commission Bill in Kigali on Wednesday, that is yesterday, the 2nd. So what does it portend? Iala MPs call for usage of local currencies across EAC. Well, we'll also discuss this a bit with our panelists. To just they're fronting for, of course, the EAC unit or using a uniform currency. That was also the aim in, I think they'd given the deadline or the year to be 2023. In Uganda, DR Congo turns heat on Uganda over M23. This is what the Daily Monitor is saying in Uganda. This is a litmus test with the President Felix Tshisekedi staring at a re-election vote next year. Intelligence has briefed Kampala officials that he could yield to nationalist demands to sever diplomatic ties, terminate joint military offensive against ADF rebels, and block Uganda airlines in DR Congo skies. This is bound to get ugly. And what does it portend also for the East African community as well? This story is tucked away on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Oil pipeline project gets major boost in Uganda there. And also, you can read all the details inside page 10 of the Daily Monitor. Return of remains of 11 blind people's crashes Seoul. This is a farewell. And all the details are there as well inside the Daily Monitor. This is new times in this is the new vision, I should say, in Uganda still. What Kenya deployment in Congo means. What Kenya deployment in Congo means, that is a splash. Uganda soldiers set, it says here. It's a bit blurry, but you can see the details there as well. For me, I can't see very well. But this is the headline and what is happening currently. Financial Times, bumper earnings raise pressure on oil majors to ease cost of living. Bumper earnings raise pressure on oil majors to help ease cost of living crisis. That is what is happening currently. And also end of the line for the fax machine as Ofcom poised to scrap telecom rules. Right? Who uses still the fax machines? Huh? You're still using fax machine. University of Nairobi is still on fax machine.
UN.
Oh, UN. Oh, United Nations. Oh, okay.
Some security issues still require...
Some security issues, huh? Oh, okay, okay.
You cannot hack a fax.
You cannot hack a fax. Really? You cannot hack a fax?
That's technology now. That's technology.
That's technology. Oh, they've not been able to hack. The hacksters are not able to. Right. This is the Financial Times. Also, Washington Post. Although we know about Bolsonaro's who is stepping down towards transition. Will Biden run again? Yes, plan takes form. That is what they're saying here. Also, police miss Pelosi attack. Panicked calls did not of a disaster. That is what we have. Netanyahu likely back on top with Israeli vote. We saw he was leading in the latest, of course, polls. So Mr. Bibi is bound to come back. And Netanyahu blasts Obama on Iran. This is what also is on the front page of the Newsweek. You ain't seen nothing yet. And of course, you're familiar with this face, what Trump will do in a second term, according to insiders. You ain't seen nothing yet. Is Trump likely to come back? Huh? What are you saying now? With this, everyone getting to be very nationalistic and navel-gazing, you know, and we saw how contentious also the last elections were.
Midterm elections.
Look at what also is happening in Italy as well with Giorgia Meloni.
But the midterm elections are really a good pointer.
They're a good pointer.
Yeah, whether you come back or not.
All right. We're eagerly waiting. They began this month, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Patrick?
If Trump makes a bid, that may be a contrarian, I think he'll get back.
If he makes a bid,
if he makes a bid, he'll get back. I mean, what you see around the world is that existing governments, whatever they've done, has been clouded by three things: COVID, and two things: COVID and the Ukraine war. So despite the fact that some of the economies are going well, all of a sudden this thing has hit everybody. And people are suffering. So the alternative is change the government. That's what people think immediately. Change the government. They're not doing whatever it is for us. And you're finding guys are just dropping one by one. The UK is hanging on a shoestring at the moment. Yeah. Just look at the number of changes they've had in, their system is very strange because so long as you're in power, you can change the prime minister as many times as you like. You don't have to go to an election.
I'm not sure. I see Netanyahu perhaps coming back.
There's no security of tenure.
Yeah. Netanyahu might come back, but with
Netanyahu is coming back.
Yeah, I think what he did on January in the DC, Trump, really is coming to haunt him. In my view, what they just did to the husband of the speaker,
Pelosi,
yes,
Pelosi.
Those are things which, and as Joe is saying, excuse me, democracy in the U.S. is under threat. But you also see what they did, and I think maybe they did in Brazil. Yeah, bring this old guy here.
That's what I'm saying. It seems people now they want to be relating to the angel that they knew more than the devil, or is it the devil that they know more than the angel they don't? Yeah? I tell you, what do you think?
I think it's how well the narrative gets spun. I think that electorates, and I'm not a political analyst, but I think that political decisions that electorates make vary a lot based on current regimes, which is exactly what he's talking about. But I also think that this change comes a lot because of also the economic crisis, and unfortunately, cycles of analysis on economic issues always come late. But then during the term of that particular regime, often you see things in a different light. And so sometimes when electorates are voting, they vote based on old knowledge rather than the actual audited economic output or analysis that comes out after a regime comes out. And sometimes that softens a lot of these things. And when people's money pockets get affected,
yes,
they make different
They
decisions.
remember who made their pockets feel nice.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, that fuzzy feeling that you had on your pocket. They say, oh, we can relate this to so and so. And there was a lot of also what we call the cancel culture with Donald Trump. Even as we're heading to COP27 now in Egypt, we know the Paris agreement as well that he rescinded, pulled out the US from it as well. People now, with the Biden administration, they're coming back to it. Could we also talk about the cancel culture that also the US has really fronted on many fronts during his administration? And we had Biden trying now to, of course, course correct that.
You know, a lot of populist statements that are made catch people in the moment, right? Very few political people are able to spin a message that I will buy because it's going to happen in 2030 or 2040, right? So you will find that obviously when you start going against climate change because it's going to do certain things to your country, guys will say, yes, this is great because for me it means it's going to impact me positively.
Yes.
Personally. But when you talk about climate change and the impact that it's going to have by 2050, no, that's too far away. Right? I'm hungry, I'm whatever. I'll be dead by that. It's something different. Let me not get involved. Yeah.
You're also spinning a narrative because you're saying course correct. So, that means you're a certain political way of thinking. But you don't know what the Americans think. I mean, they've voted both directions, right? And it's always been so tight, each time. So
there's no
who
course
knows
correction,
what the course is, right?
So it's a bit of uncertainty there. All right, this is what the Newsweek is holding. And you wanted to say something, Professor?
No, I liked her narrative. It's how the government wants to come in, looks at this global issue and blames the current government. How you give that narrative will make you come in.
Indeed. All right, also Money Week is here, and you can look at Money Week. There is absolute power. 3 weeks or last month, we had President Xi Jinping holding his, of course, the meeting with the CCP party, and he has now solidified his grip on power. This is absolute power. It says Xi's grip on China is bad for investors. This is what they're saying here. That is tucked away on page 24 of the Money Week. I don't know why it is bad for investors unless you read, but maybe you can tell us why is it bad for investors on Xi's grip on power?
No, I wasn't on you. Pass. I'll come in. I was thinking about it.
Mine is a different question. Mine is why should investors really matter? Half the world sits there. Shouldn't he be focusing on his people, which is maybe what he is doing? Hence, it's not so good for investors. I mean, it's how Money Week is phrasing it. Also,
this thing is a new Mao. Maybe we can make a comparative analysis of Mao. How was it in the business environment with Mao?
Before my era, right?
I don't think. I mean, Mao had his socialist principle, and he ran the whole country, top to bottom, on a socialist basis. Look at the shift that has happened, whereby it is no longer a socialist country. It's a socialist government, but a normal sort of a free market, a capitalist kind of thing below that. Now that, in my view, is a successful way of running a country. And China has grown drastically because of that. So people were talking about China not being a place to invest. What happened? The West went lock, stock, and barrel into China for reasons of economies of scale. There was the market was there, because of the people who were there. Then secondly, the cost of production was much lower, yeah, and they had very liberal policies that attracted people to come in, right? Obviously, because of the changes that have happened in China since then, the cost, I mean, the salary rates have gone up, etc., etc. China is now the same in terms of manufacturing costs as anywhere else in the world. So where are they looking to? Africa. Is Africa ready for that? Probably not. Investors, yeah, to China will just do their maths, they'll do their calculations, and if China works, they'll go. If China doesn't work, they won't go. But the change at the top is political, right? And for China, that kind of political setup works, right? You've got a strong man, he's got good policies, and he tells the country, we're going to go this way, and they go. In a democracy, which everybody touts and everything else.
Something between democracy and media. I don't know what to call it. We have to look at a name for it.
Let's hear from Bilo. Bilo seems to disagree.
Which facilitates the business community.
Yeah.
But also, hakuna nyoko-nyoko in there in the government.
Absolutely.
And then somebody's always going to be unhappy.
The last time I had that one, nyoko-nyoko.
It's not on the
I don't
list
know
of hate
what
speech,
time.
I hope.
Yes, Bilo.
No, Dibala, I don't agree with. I can't agree with him. I think this gentleman is a dictator.
He's a dictator, yeah.
And you have seen what happened in Hong Kong in the last few years. You have seen the millions of Muslims in Xinjiang province, where he's put them in concentration camps. You have seen what his threat on Taiwan and many others. His close relationship with China in this war and so forth. He is not. It's typically a communist country, with this guy now becoming more of a dictator. In fact, worse than the previous premiers who have been running the country. And this is why there's a concern, because he's been moving in the last two elections to try and really bring back a very strong control on the country. And it's not about capitalist, really. Even the economy is not capitalist. Look what happened to Jack Ma. For simply, outperforming all other,
Silicon
companies,
Valley, yes.
He gets punished. You can't do as well as you want, even as a capitalist in China. And politically, it's a one-party thing that you have to, which is communist in nature. So I think, and he's being, slowly by slowly, this guy is taking that country back into the Maoist kind of era. And this is why everyone is concerned about his grip on the power. In my view, it's not a good thing.
I think the bottom line, if you look at Chinese today, in terms of what you look at the basic requirements, they are better off. Look at the kind of investment they have. Look at the kind of they can feed them. And I think, to me, at the end of the day, you probably need that level of discipline. I would call it discipline as opposed to the dictator. Because at the bottom line, the Chinese today is better than was. And the good thing I like about you, nyongo, whatever you're calling it.
Nyoko-nyoko.
Not an academic term.
I will know.
The good performance of an economy does not really mean you have to be a dictator or a communist. Look at the countries neighboring him, like South Korea. They are very democratic, and they have performed better than China in terms of the economy. And they have Singapore and many other countries in the West which are democratic but performed a bit much better than China in terms of the economy. So it doesn't mean that if you have what you are trying to sugarcoat and call discipline is nothing but a dictatorship, a communist dictatorship. And look at the human rights abuses in that country. Look at what will happen to you even as a businessman if you are not towing the line. If you are not in good books with him and with the Communist Party, look what's going to happen to you. So I don't think that is what people want.
Because I think it's different.
But let me put something on the table. Look at the successful democracies. How large is the population? How large is the country?
Correct.
Right? They're much smaller and therefore easier to run. Look at China and its sheer size. Right? And the kind of things that they've been able to achieve through the way they've worked. Right? And I think I think the two countries you can look at is China and India. Because they both got large populations.
Yeah.
Right? And you look at the way they are structured. India has got the strength in the in its devolution, right? A lot of the states are actually very, very strong, and they do a lot of their own things as states. So the country, India, the top level, right? The amount of influence they can have at the state level is actually limited. Correct. Right? China is slightly different, where the state actually has a lot of influence in there, and both of them actually achieve results in different ways. So which is a better one?
But this is where I think
you bring in now human rights, you bring in whatever it is, and so forth.
I don't want our colleagues running this country to hear this, because we'll get into serious trouble. He'll be the first one to cry out when they start unleashing the state on him. So let's remain poor but be free.
Be free. Remain poor but be free. Maybe the comparison was with Libya, with under Muammar Gaddafi as well. What Professor is trying to put on the table as discipline is a benevolent dictator.
That's
right? Yeah, that is the word he's trying to avoid. He's a benevolent dictator.
Yeah.
You had, the country really running well. People were not in lack, and people were saying, "Oh,
No,
as
that's
long
good.
as we have Muammar Gaddafi on top
Next
there."
door, Kim Jong, the guy in North Korea, is a benevolent. Do you want to call him a dictator?
I'm not quite sure about that.
They are
Is
it's the same communist party, but they're not performing well in terms of the economy. So it doesn't mean if you have
Atia.
If you're going to call him professor, you must also do the same.
Professor
Because
Atia.
unlike gender discrimination happening.
Professor Atia.
But you can take our first names then. If he's okay with it, then we're good. Atia is fine.
I've told many times.
He doesn't listen.
I know how difficult it is in academia. Those appellations.
Who responds?
Yes.
Who responds to that?
Yes, they didn't give you notes for it today, clearly.
No, I've taken note. I know how serious those appellations are in the academia. Right. Yeah, but still.
I think that China is a space that is very hard to discuss and compare with others. And I only said one thing in the beginning, as I heard everybody speak, it's half the world.
It's half the world.
It's half the world. So if you're dealing with half the world, I mean, think about the corona crisis, think about the economy, think about them trying to manage their population, and then this whole very tight administrative structure that they have in place in order to do it. And I wonder sometimes if we can even compare. I think maybe we can compare a city with a city or a province with a country. But I don't think we can actually compare China with another country just because of the mammoth size of the population.
The sheer size of it. The sheer size of it.
Professor, what do you think?
Thank you so much. All right, then we have also the week there and the Sunak's triumph. Can he unite the Tories? That is the question that the week is asking. And we've seen that particular slagfest. As you were saying, the span of, this is Patrick about, you were talking about the span of the PMs that we've seen in the recent past. Within 2 years, it has been a bit worrying. And we were asking about the security tenure of the, I don't know how the politics are, but will, as we always say, Sunak be able to, make the elephant dance? That is the UK economy where it is right now.
I think the key thing with the UK is that they have a system which you have to use and go through. If you back that system, it bites you. So Sunak has got to be very careful. If he's going to make any drastic changes, he must go through the steps of making those changes. Right? And the narrative has to be very clear, because in the UK, it's a narrative that works. And so long as he can do that and make sure that the different agencies that are there, the independent, the independent commissions equivalent here, that they are all aligned to the thinking and they give their view. And he may disagree with it, but they have given their view. He will be able to then tread that path, right, the way that he might want to do, and maybe, make a little bit of hardship for everybody, but he will then begin to get results. But unfortunately, I think this trust, when she sort of did what she did, they just went making announcements, right? And they decided, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And they made it within no time without consultation outside of the party. And that just brought their downfall very quickly. So I think one has got to be politically savvy in the UK and understand how to navigate that minefield, right? And much as, and the UK has, since Brexit, they've had issues here as a country.
I met that too, Patrick was saying. And all they also understand the whole UK system, starting from the king.
Yeah.
No, it's just a question of you're there, but the king, what is the whole thing thinking about? The House of Commons. It's a very complicated kind of a democracy in its own way.
Yeah.
And also perhaps without being, as they have that coffee at 4 p.m., is this really a Briton who is in charge of us here?
Is it a Kenyan?
There's something on the other mind.
Yeah. Maybe there's any remote connection with the Professor Atia here. You never know. These people, you can go under the family tree and find, truly, I've got some
I
connection
have
with...
friends in high places, man. It's tribe number 44. But I also think it's so interesting. It's not just about the UK. Pakistan has had changes in cabinet, like extensively. Argentina has had changes, and I think it's the season of it. It is the narrative. It is finding the balance, but it's also having the solution and finding a solution. And this constant change is about not just, I think, the solution, but finding the right person to roll out what I think are going to be very difficult solutions.
Yes, that changes in this country. Yes.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Bilo.
What do you think?
No, the British are very conservative, and they may not say so, but they have always been very careful who runs that country. You remember what happened to the Chancellor? Was it Gordon, the Scottish guy? Scottish. He didn't survive. I will not be surprised if they don't push for an election just because of this, a general election, so that they can. Yeah. These guys have always been very careful that not even a Scottish or someone that's outside Britain can run that country.
Yeah.
So it's not really about your performance. It's about also your origin.
Yeah,
Is it?
They are very conscious of that. They are very conscious of that.
Kwasi Kwarteng was the shortest term that a stint of a chancellor has ever held in that particular docket. Was it 38? In fact, for a month, 38 days and some weeks.
Yeah.
There've been others, but that's why I think it's about that narrative. It's about choosing a person to do something at a particular point in time because it will allow it to continue, and allowing a person to be the fall person sometimes because that's the only person who can get away with that. At being able to utilize those pieces in play. I mean, sometimes it's like a chess game, I think. And they move the piece, and then the piece has done its job. Sometimes I think it's that particular person has done what they were brought in to do, even if it was for 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Once it's done, you are no longer of value at that point in time. And it's a political
You're a pawn,
issue.
you're not a king.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I just said. Yeah.
Even in Europe or US, wherever, you can't rule out racism in this world nowadays. Look, I mean, even if you perform very well, even if this guy really surprises them with his performance, they would still have that narrative one way or the other. You saw it during the time of Obama. Even after he left, how did Trump come in? Trump came in because they couldn't imagine how Obama.
No, we need, it was something America back again or something.
Yes, so that narrative, however subtle it is always there.
Actually, Trump was very clear. It's like America has been taken away from America.
So and many believed in him, half the population.
And you saw this guy, the black guy, too poor for him. The jubo he took from Washington to London. It was the most followed by the media when he was running the UK. I don't know for what reason. And I think it's a very difficult place to be in. For those who have stayed there, I've been there for about 2 years as a student. You really feel it. And you're right. And one time I was walking, and this guy says, nigger. Just see me, I'm black, and calls me nigger. And I was like, what's a nigger? And he was like, you don't know what's a nigger? You're one. I said, no. I'm not a nigger, I'm Wainaina. But I felt it, but I was being cheeky. I was being cheeky on it.
We need a movie with that. Like, my name is Wainaina. Now that's the new one. But it is sad. But I see structural discrimination sometimes even worse than these anecdotes of what happens on the street. I mean, it's a sign of a system sometimes that hasn't fixed itself. And I mean, we still work with bits and pieces of colonial heritage in the country. Many post-colonial states do. And how are we fixing those issues? And this is a conversation even happening at the global level. I recently got appointed to a Lancet Commission on health and structural discrimination at a global level, because there are big question marks even, you know, around how vaccines were being redistributed. So there's systems in place also that have to
like 10
shift
countries.
a little bit.
10 countries have been banned from the, is it the World Cup or whatever? 10 African countries. And you're like, why? Starting with Uganda all the way to DRC.
Yeah.
And they're like, is this another way of, hey, you guys, I think it's time, as you take that responsibility, it's time as African nation to step back. Because when you're told you can't go because there's a World Cup or whatever, whew.
Right. Okay.
4 teams, no?
Yeah?
Ebola at play.
But some countries have 4 teams at the World Cup. Am I right?
Okay, all right. So that is what we have on the Money Week. Reason to be cheerful. The Economist, the latest edition is here, part 3, and it's all about also Sunak. Will he also turn or make the elephant dance in the UK? It's not just inflation. This is a US edition. There are the risk of Bidenomics. It's not just inflation right now. And today's editorial cartoons as well. Before we gravitate deeper into a discussion on what we want to do today, look at this. This is in the Star this morning, or page 3 of the Star, then and now. And this is the current CS of trade. Then on the campaign trail, it was all about, you remember how contentious was the Mitumba pronouncement from the Azimio. And they took it, they ran with it, that Mitumba ni watu ambao wamekufa. But now that Mitumba is also on the agenda of the current administration. They're taking the same narrative, twisted it a bit. Patrick, but what do you read about this editorial cartoon today?
I've always had a view about Mitumba. And I've always said, remove the clothes from Mitumba and look at the distribution system. It is one of the most effective distribution systems you have in this country. And then convert what that distribution system into an opportunity. Put whatever it is at one end and let it flow. Whether it is clothes, whether it is shoes, whether it is whatever it is. What we're looking at here is the origin of what goes into that system. Now, if you remember, I think it was almost 4 or 5 years ago, we had a nice big exhibition at KCC where clothes, almost quote factory rejects, I think they were, from the manufacturer, from the EPZ, was brought for people to buy at a very, very good rate. But it was only put at KCC. It wasn't taken around the country. I believe that trying to translate what he's saying is, let us take those sort of factory rejects, which are not bad. We buy them when you go to Mauritius, right? Where there is, you buy your sort of your high price brands at throwaway cost because a small stitch is wrong. That's all. Nobody will notice it. Let's take those and put them into the Mitumba system. So you'll have clothes that are affordable, but are now being distributed in a system that already works. So let us not talk about a ban on Mitumba. Let us just look at the Mitumba as a system and say we are going to put a new product into that system. And that means that we can then ban the importation of cheap clothes. Right? I think the narrative that they put out has got to be right. I think we'll talk about narratives before. And the opportunity that he's seeing, I think, is correct. Right? Let's take the factory rejects, let's put them into this Mitumba system that distributes very well, and let Kenyans get cheap clothes that are new, that they can take, and it then supports local manufacture. Because those rejects, where do they go? They're still exported somewhere else and they're used elsewhere. Why not put them in this country?
All right.
So I think he's onto a good idea, but the way he's selling it, I don't think is right.
Right.
How is it diametrically different from what Raila was selling?
No, both of them are selling the wrong thing. Ban Mitumba. Yeah? And then keep Mitumba. I think Mitumba for me is a system. It's not the clothes you're selling. Change that narrative to that. And then say, let us put affordable items into the Mitumba system. Now, where's the source of those affordable items? Factory rejects in Kenya, right? And if you can get rid of them locally, those companies, their costs may be a bit, ameliorated in a way, because they're not now spending money sending them abroad to be sold.
But that's the thing. So you were saying factory rejects. Who wants to wear the factory rejects? Well,
I wear them.
You can get.
I wear them.
The Louis Vuitton. At least
I don't think
the original.
It's a Louis Vuitton factory reject that I'm wearing.
But I don't think Patrick is seeing those rejects, perhaps the way you did. Because you're saying, if you look at the kind of the Prime Minister in UK, the kind of suits he wears, surely, you can't go for that. But it could be a button, perhaps it didn't come out as it was supposed.
Yeah.
And that doesn't get into that kind of a market. And that's what I'm saying. And I had an opportunity to talk with this guy at the Babadogo. I think he does a lot of export. And he said, when I can produce shirts for this market here. Yeah. And if I can produce this at a differentiated cost, and that's a strategy we can use. If perhaps you look at this market, their per capita income is higher than us. I can charge you about $100. I can charge somebody here $20 or $5. I think, and those rejects, we buy them, as he says. Yeah. A stitch somewhere just messed up, and it's a reject. And I think what he's saying here, and we must understand Mitumba. I see Mitumba, to me, it's feeding a need. It's how we package that. It's giving opportunities, and it's also demand for it. So you can't wake up and say we are banning Mitumba. What's the alternative? You take the case of Rwanda, coming very clear, and say, fine, we are in this AGOA, we want Mitumba, but we are going to charge you 16%. Yet. So make the choices. And the point he was making, and I think Patrick brought it, look the spiral effect. If you can get our house in order, you're actually looking at that farmer.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Thank
Who
you.
brings you the cotton. So you're going bottom down, not bottom up. You're going bottom down and actually bring those people up to provide the raw material.
Yeah. Professor Tier and Bilo, then we take a short break.
Well, I think it's part of his narrative also about formalizing the informal, because you have two options. You can do the blunt instrument and say the word ban, and this is conversation that's been in the country for many years. Should we ban Mitumba? It's not new for us, whereas of course Rwanda has taken a very strong viewpoint on it. But in Rwanda, I think a lot of the conversation around banning Mitumba was also about the psychological effect of this population that needed to feel good about themselves. There was that part of it in there as well, post-genocide. But now you're coming to Kenya and we're in an economic slump. People are on less than $3 a day. Some people are on absolutely nothing. Now is not the time to affect or destabilize low income or no income
of any sector.
Right. So for me, it is that question is, let's not start with the conversation of ban Mitumba. Let's start with the conversation of what are you replacing it with?
Correct.
And then when you replace it, don't lose the positivity that was within it, which is this entire distribution system. Because there's also this Maidawa thing that is now using the boda-bodas to distribute drugs across the country, which is fascinating as well. So I think it's to change the approach of not coming at things head on and talking about it from a different direction, I think would be useful.
And Peter, do you find it a bit consternating that we have all the CSs who are coming with this broadside declaration? Just quick off the mark, I'll come and we'll increase the civil servants' salary in 100 days, we'll ban Mitumba. I mean, there's a lot of this that is up in the air right now. Is it populists? Is there any reality in it?
On the Mitumba, I think this Mitumba debate is an elitist argument by people who are not in touch with reality. Because when you are watching on TV every day, people eating, your own citizens eating wild berries to survive, or others who can't even stand up because of poverty and hunger, and you're telling them, we don't want to import this, we want to support factories. You are not in touch with what's going on in the country. This is about poverty. If you're not addressing poverty, you cannot talk about Mtumba and those things. That's not the debate. The debate is address poverty. If the poverty is addressed, nobody will wear, and nobody will go for those cheap things. You know, it's the need. So I think for me that's a misplaced argument, really. But in terms of this roadside, I think you've got to live with it, Dibal. It's going to be there for a while. It seems to be what the top leadership wants. So when the boss and the deputy have that as the way of management style, then the rest will follow. They take cue from the boss and they'll do it. They take the cue and they do it. So you must, of course, it's populist, and you have to be seen to be in charge. This is the mentality. But I think governments, we have seen Kibaki's government where you can work quietly but do it much more effectively. But you can, you know, I'm a pastoralist. I'll tell you a very interesting story with respect to Madam Professor. So, you know, if you have the goats and the sheep, they're fundamentally different in one way. This he-goat, if you have a bomb of goats, throughout the night is making noise, the he-goat. Trying for, you know.
That's funny noise.
No, this noise about wanting to mate with all the other she-goats. Throughout the night it's making that noise. But at the end of the day, they say, the pastoralists say, he can only get one he-goat at most pregnant at the end of the sheep is different. That male sheep, the ram, no noise at night. You'll never hear, but he will make 100 pregnant.
I was waiting for that part.
So what you need to work. Those are.
I think now you went for the most this morning.
I think that's a good point to take a short break right now. Yeah. Yes, so it's not about the noise, right? It's about the work at the end of the day, and I think Kabila has aptly put it, right? Stop bleating all night. Keep quiet.